most recently, a pastor in Edmonton was not just fined, he was also jailed for continuing to hold religious services, which is against, I guess, the bylaws in Edmonton and with restrictions on gathering sizes in the province of Alberta. So I think this is the first case in which I've heard of a pastor being jailed. And of course, this runs amok with freedom of assembly and with freedom of religious expression and freedom to worship. I have concerns about this. I'm concerned that with COVID, perhaps we have given up now too many civil liberties, and now we have pastors being jailed. David, I'm going to throw the question to you. What do you think about this? Do you think this is too much of a violation of our freedoms? Do you think people should just get with the program and lock it up? What do you think?
So I probably fall right in the middle personally. So I think that arresting the pastor has certainly created a Streisand effect, right? You've arrested this pastor. He's now in jail. So he's now a hero to so many and a villain to so many. And the more he becomes a villain, the more he becomes a hero. It's the same with the quite intense response to the Adamson barbecue affair in Toronto. But I do have concerns with the justification that he is essentially claiming that he should not or should not be required to follow any of the public health mandates. And so that means not having masks, not abiding by the capacity limits at all. And the reason why that worries me is because he could have quite easily and reasonably said, hey, come look, I'm opening and I can operate safely at 30% or 40% or even 50%. I don't know. But he didn't. He chose to say, we're not going to have any rules. We're going to have as many people as they want to be in here, which obviously does pose a public health risk. And so I kind of find myself in the middle here where there could have been a much more effective way to engage in civil disobedience and still carry on with preaching. But at the same time, the province's response does now seem like it's making the problem worse.
Well, those are some good points. I think that many Canadians who are of faith and who do want to attend their regular worship services, some of them I've heard are suggesting there's a double standard. You know, I can go to a Home Depot, I can go to a Costco, and they're not subject to the same capacity requirements. You know, when I go to church, I see everybody's wearing a mask. We're socially distancing. We're sanitizing our hands. But, you know, not as much as required when I go to the grocery store and I'm rubbing shoulders. So is there a double standard? And are places of worship and pastors in this country being unnecessarily targeted? Hannah, what do you say about this?
Yeah, I agree with that. I would say all the COVID restrictions for faith communities have unfairly targeted them and are a violation, like you said, of our Charter rights of freedoms of conscience, religion, association, and peaceful assembly. Like you mentioned as well, how is it scientific that we can go to Costco with 500 other people, like I can here where I live, but not be allowed to go to church in person or with very small gathering limits? And the other thing is, the government has completely overstepped the bounds of its authority during this time. It is amazing to see how many people, I think, that are staunch advocates of the separation of church and state, but they're totally fine with the state swallowing up the church right now, which they don't have any authority to.
No, that's a good question.
I do want to interject there because I think the way in which that conversation is described is not the reality of what's actually happening, because we're talking about a church that could have stayed open under the capacity.
Well, they were only
limits
allowed 15% capacity there, so that allowed them very few people compared to the grocery stores, and he mentioned that in one of his statements.
So I think, yes, that disparity is
quite
important.
Frankly, because, I mean, when you're looking at grocery stores, that's, of course, an essential service. People need to eat. They need food. As I mentioned earlier, I'm a Christian. I've been attending service every Sunday for the past 3 to 4 months, if not longer, and I've been doing it from home using Zoom. I don't think it's impossible for you to worship, only being in person. I do it with Zoom, and then I know that the other argument would be, well, not everybody has access to Wi-Fi, not everybody has technology, but you know what? What's stopping you from practicing worship in your own home with your family? I mean, my Bible sits on my mantle. So for me, I just don't see the argument. I think we all understand that we're in a very serious time, and this is a global pandemic, and we have to do everything we can to fight it. And that includes gathering in large places where many people congregate, and that's exactly what service is.